right. So we'll do double check. Everything should be live now and ready to go. Hopefully, people are able to see and hear. Looks like we've got a good connection here. So I am here with my friend Mikey, who is a bass oboe specialist. And just so you know, there's about a 30-second lag on the stream between when I talk and then when you hear it, and then probably about another 30 seconds back. So let me know if you are able to see and hear this. So hopefully everything is working good, and I'm going to go ahead and actually bring up a secondary stream here just in case. But Mikey is a bass oboe specialist, and he's got his bass oboe with us. Okay, so I'm going to have to use my phone because for whatever reason, the connection is not coming through. Everything sounds good. I can see and hear you. All right. So, go ahead and start getting any kind of questions you have about bass oboe. Analytics. Okay. All right. So, go ahead and get any questions you have. Okay, so Mikey, why don't you go ahead and play something? You want to play something out of the planets?
Yeah, sure. So,
okay.
I've got the bass oboe here. For those of you who are familiar with the oboe in itself, you will notice just how much larger this instrument is.
I wouldn't lift it up too much further because there's a fan up there, and you don't want to get that thing chopped in the fan.
Yeah, to hit the fan.
So, question here: favorite bass oboe solo?
I'd have to say it's really short actually. It's just in Neptune, and it's just after figure 5, and it's just after a point where the oboe section join in with the bass oboe just after, so it has this rising sequence, which is then passed over to the cor anglais or English horn, and then the oboes then carry it on. And it creates a really nice texture, and it goes like this. And so on. And I really like it because it just comes out of the texture of the orchestra. Obviously there's the big solo in Saturn. For those of you who aren't familiar, it goes like this. And it's kind of the first time really that you hear the bass oboe stand out within the Planet suite. However, I've just been looking over the Warrior and the solo in that, and I actually quite like it, but I'm trying to figure out the
the so we'll talk about the Warriors here in a second. All right, so we got. Could you play some half notes, whole notes over the register just to hear its timbre? So yeah.
Sure. So how about if I play the whole register, the whole range of the instrument? So the way that you read the bass oboe music is very similar to how you read it as a bass clarinet, and that's where the notes is written just on the stave as normal, and then it sounds an octave lower than written. So the lowest note on the instrument is B, which is written the semitone below middle C on the stave, but it sounds an octave lower, so it sounds like this. And I think that the instrument has 3 very distinctive tonal qualities. So you have this kind of the first octave from that low B to the middle, the B on the stave, Is the very bass oboe sort of characteristics.
Yeah. That's kind of where we, as a composer, we really like it.
Yeah, this the big, juicy, meaty, dark, rich sound. And then as you go over the break of the instrument, has a much more bassoon-like characteristic, I think.
A little bit. I mean, it's still definitely oboe timbre.
And
we'll compare it to bassoon here in a little bit.
And then, so that's the B that's just above the stave now, but it's sounding an octave lower. So from the B above the stave, I'll keep going up. And that's an A written an octave higher than that. So,
and getting up to that A on the bass oboe is really pretty easy.
Yeah, much easier than the oboe. And there's some kind of B flat or B up there.
Yeah, you just have to kind of figure out, some stuff with it. Okay, so we've got some questions about reeds, and yes, there is a little bit of a lag on it, on time. So yeah, let's. So compared to an oboe reed, do you have oboe reeds in the other room?
I do actually have some oboe reeds.
You want me to go grab them?
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay, in the case?
Yeah.
Okay.
So in terms of reeds, I don't know how well you can see this, but it's basically like a larger English horn or oboe d'amore reed, where you sort of tie the cane onto the staple, which doesn't have any cork on it, like the oboe reeds. So just as a sort of comparison, so I have an English horn reed and an oboe reed here, so you can see, sort of, hopefully you can see.
Well, let's get those a little bit closer to the camera. So oboe here, English horn here, and then bass oboe.
Yeah, and then that's the bass oboe one.
Here. So it's not a huge difference. And then bassoon is here. And bassoon reed is substantially larger still.
Yeah, and a lot wider also.
Right. The reed designs between bassoon and oboe are so vastly different than one another. And that's kind of what will give a little bit of the differences in sound between the two.
And I think also that's why then the Heckelphone, which is another type of bass oboe, which is the reed is more.
Yeah, the Heckelphone reed is essentially just a small bassoon reed.
Yeah, and that's why I think it has a sort of different tonal quality compared to the bass oboe.
Let's see. Even though you're a bass oboe specialist, how often do you get called to play the bass oboe? Do you ever play any of the other members of the oboe family?
Yes, so I actually have all 5 instruments. I have the piccolo oboe, the normal oboe, oboe d'amore, English horn, and bass oboe.
But you weren't able to bring them with you because Norwegian Airlines basically said, "F you, you can't take that much on the plane."
Yeah, I was already 10 kilograms over my limit and had to ask them not to throw my instrument away so I can get on the plane. So a lot of stuff that I do basically is working with composers, and also that's a good shout out for Norwegian there, like good for you guys. A lot of stuff that I do is working with composers and creating solo repertoire for the bass oboe. So I've commissioned around 35 works, and have been able to get a good library of music for like solo, electronic, contemporary, avant-garde, orchestral, ensemble, just all sorts really. There's a huge variety now, and what I'm hoping to do next year is study a PhD at the Royal Academy of Music in London, and my thesis will be culminating all this together and just getting a catalogue of works available for people to access, hear and play. And then, so I mean, because it was the centenary of the planets last year, I think between November and March of this year, I played it about 9 or 10 times all over the UK. And then, yeah, there's some pieces that it does pop up in as well. I've played a piece by a composer called Goebbels. He was a German composer. It was a lot more of a chamber orchestra, and the part needed oboe, cornglay, and bass oboe.
All right, so we got a lot more questions here. How much more tiring is it to play than regular oboe?
Just so much more. Like,
yeah.
This, I would say that this is the size of an oboe, just the bottom joint. And then you have all of here to contend with.
Honestly, the bell itself weighs nearly as much as the oboe itself.
Yeah, almost.
Yeah, the bell, when I had the bell off yesterday or the day before, the bell is heavy.
It's like a grenade. Like
it's, it is. This is not. It's solid wood to about here, and then it hollows out a little bit. But I mean, the wall is probably a good centimeter thick.
Yeah, it's fat.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I could hit you with this, and you would be out cold.
Yeah, don't do that though.
No, I mean,
yeah,
I don't know any other woodwind instrument that has that thick of a wall to it.
Yeah, well, I guess also the bore on the instrument is pretty thick and large as well. It's a much bigger instrument than the oboe, and because I don't use a sling, I don't use a peg. Once I've been playing, if I've done like an hour-long recital on it, I can really feel the strain on my arm, like here. But because there is no sling for the instrument, there is no sort of development done for the bass oboe.
Can you not use like a bassoon neck strap?
I don't think it would work. We could try it, but I really don't think it would work because you wouldn't play it like this.
No, you'd play it out in the front, like a clarinet strap.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we can see later and see what happens.
I don't have a clarinet strap.
So I use an English horn strap sometimes, the elasticated one. But because the way that I play and the way that the instrument needs to be really, you want it out like this, so that the airstream is just going straight forward. So that's how much you want to really be lifting it.
And even by doing that, I can hear a volume change.
Yeah, right. It projects more.
Yeah.
But if you're sitting and because you're holding it out so that the sound can travel and project, whereas if you are playing like this, and some people support it on their feet,
and that sounds like it's muted.
Yeah, which you don't want.
No. Okay, lots more. How rare is it?
So I would say in England there are 13 instruments, I think. There's 2 in Australia. I'm not really sure how many there are in America. I can't imagine more than 20.
20, maybe more than that, 20, 25.
Right. In Germany, I think there's about 2 or 3. I think there's 1 in France. I mean, they're really like not around that much. And that kind of, as you say in your book, is the catch-22.
Yeah.
There's not many instruments out there, not many people own them, so why would composers write for it?
But composers kind of want to write for it because we want that sound.
Yeah.
So it's... okay, so there's lots more here, and now we'll get to every question here. Is lupophone considered a bass oboe?
Yeah, well, I guess that the bass oboe is actually more considered as a baritone instrument, and then the lupophone will be the bass element, because I can only reach the B, and the lupophone can go down to an F. So
yeah, the lupophone's a tritone bigger.
Also a tritone heavier.
But it has a built-in 4-peg.
Yeah.
So you don't play that one standing.
Yeah. And the difference in sound, I have played a lupophone, and the difference, I was comparing the two together, so playing my bass and playing the lupophone, and the sound on the lupophone is so much larger. I mean, I think I have quite a big sound on the bass oboe because I do use it as a solo instrument. Whereas I've played the Sydney Symphony Orchestra's bass oboe, and it's a lot less open and a lot less able to project because it's not really played that much. And I think for bass oboists, I probably play mine a lot compared to a lot of other people.
You probably play more bass oboe than just about anybody in the world, I would think.
Potentially, yeah. So my sound is big and the instrument is open, but the looperphone was even bigger.
Mm-hmm.
It had a gargantuan sound, really.
Yeah, it's...
After sitting it with for like half an hour, I managed to like adapt to it and the different reed and stuff, and yeah, it's a fantastic instrument, and I would really like to sort of explore it a bit more. But the cost again is then a further.
Yeah, it's double the cost about.
Just a bit under
Yeah.
£25,000.
Let's see. So does it basically have a 3-octave range? Yes, it's got right at a 3-octave range.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
It's got the biggest usable range of any of the oboes.
Yeah, and I think actually the difference is what you don't. If you are writing for the bass oboe and up in that top octave, what you don't want to be writing is stuff like crazy fast stuff that you'd be doing down here, like it's easier to do that down there because just of the
fingerings. Yeah.
So if you wanted like a slow lyrical melody going up that high, it's very doable and it's very easy. The more you back away from it, the more it projects, the more it sounds.
Yeah, I think that there's a big solo in Thomas Addis's Asila that's way up there. It's like high G.
Right.
It starts on a high G.
Yeah, that's really easy to do there. And you can control the dynamic quite easily with it.
And that's something that the Heckelphone doesn't do.
Right, yeah.
And the Heckelphone really stops about D or so.
Mm-hmm. And even the oboe, I mean, it's when you're up that high and a lot of people don't even like playing up that high.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you're up that high on the oboe, it's really quite hard to control and keep in tune.
Okay, so does a clarinet bell fit on it?
I've never tried. Let's try. Let's see.
This is probably the biggest clarinet bell I've got.
No, it's too small.
No, it does not. So, sorry, Jared. Clarinet bell.
I don't know what that would do to it either. It would change the sound quite a lot because...
it would change the sound a little bit. Probably more like the Monig oboe, which basically has a clarinet-style bell on it.
Yeah.
Okay. The Essential Dictionary of Orchestration says that a Heckelphone, having a better tone quality, would be a better candidate for the same range within the oboe family. Would you consider this true? Are there situations where you prefer a bass oboe instead?
Well, I think that's a very sort of subjective...
Absolutely subjective. I mean, this is a much more flexible instrument than the Heckelphone. You can do more with it.
Yeah, you can do a lot more. You can play a lot more virtuosically. In terms of practicality and accessibility as well, the bass oboe is beyond the Heckelphone in that sense. Like, there are less than 100 working instruments in the world
for a Heckelphone, right?
Whereas there's probably double that and more for the bass oboe, and you can still have them made for you. And if you're an oboe player, okay, if you have the instrument for about a week, 2 weeks, you can adapt and get used to the bass oboe. Whereas I think if you have a Heckelphone, it's a different embouchure, it's a different technique.
And we find that more bassoon players play Heckelphone than they play bass than oboe players do.
Sure. So what is quite interesting, actually, I think, with regards to this question, is that I actually think that the Heckelphone and the bass oboe have ever been played together at the same time. Whereas Brett has written me a piece for Heckelphone, bass oboe, and bassoon, which is being premiered on the 9th of October.
8th? I think you said 8th yesterday.
Wednesday, the second week of October, in the UK. And it's actually the first time that we're going to be able to hear those two instruments together, but also with the bassoon as well, because they have quite a lot of tonal characteristics which could work quite well within the blend. So that's going to be really interesting and exciting to explore.
I'm going to be very interested to see how the two instruments will compare and contrast and add to one another.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea of having both a bass oboe and a Heckelphone next to each other, and for a composer, that's kind of exciting. I mean, I just think about that in the middle of a big orchestra section or a big wind band section. It's just how rich and pungent that tenor register is going to be. Yeah, because that is the absolute weakest register in any large ensemble, is that middle tenor register.
Yeah, so I think obviously both of the instruments have similarities, but they're also quite different in a way. So in terms of tone and timbre, I guess it'd be down to the composer's wishes, but once the composer is informed and knows the difference between the sound, then they can make that decision themselves.
Yes, and by and large, though, I don't think most composers know the difference, because most orchestration textbooks don't make a distinction between the two. They just say the bass oboe goes down to B and the Heckelphone goes down to A, and there's your difference. It's like, no.
But also the German bass oboes also go down to A now. So
Yeah, well, the brand new Monigs, but how many of those are out there? Maybe 10?
unsure.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be able to tell.
So, all right. Have you ever played in any wind bands? If so, how is the approach different than playing in an orchestra?
On bass oboe, I guess that would be 4. Like the question would be about bass
Yeah.
oboe just in general. So in the UK, it's slightly different to over here in America. We don't really have a huge wind band culture. The only sort of professional ensembles are with the military, with the Army, the Navy, and Royal Air Force. Although we do have symphonic wind bands, more like community-based things, and orchestras within universities and conservatoires. I have done the wind band arrangement of the planets. It's slightly different compared to the orchestral set, but I mean, they're like 2 different ensembles, aren't they, really? So how you play in a wind band compared to how you play in an orchestra, you have to be a lot more sensitive in the orchestra, and you have to play down a lot.
Yeah. In the wind band, it's just you can play as loud as you want. Yeah.
Feels like a free-for-all sometimes.
Because there's so many brass instruments, you're never going to be heard anyway.
Right. So I think there's a difference as well between the American style of playing compared to the English style of playing. Like the English sound is sort of, or style of playing is a bit, the sound is larger, the sound is more full, and kind of projects a bit more, from what I understand. I'm not insulting anyone with that analogy, but yeah, I think wind band playing, it's a bit of a free-for-all, and you can't really be heard on the oboe anyway. So.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Let's see. Do I still plan on getting an oboe to my collection? Yes, at some point. I nearly bought one this week. I found one for a good price, and then it went up on eBay. When you say it's more exhausting to play, is this in terms of breath, how long you can hold a note, or physical aspects, weight?
So, yeah, a lot more exhausting in terms of weight, more than anything. The way that you sort of project and play on the oboe, and how you phrase and your breath control is all very the same for the bass oboe.
Mm-hmm.
There's not much difference in there. The difference is when you're standing playing for a recital, or even if you're sat playing an orchestra for whatever piece it may be. I have a K&M bassoon stand, which I always have next to me, and if I'm not playing, the oboe's put down. So
yeah.
It's not like, even now I can feel my thumb thinking, we've been holding it for quite a long time now.
Yeah, and you can put it down in the stand too if you want.
Yeah, so it's just quite exhausting. You can tell it's like a workout. You can tell you've been playing it.
Yeah. So are Heckelphones more rare? My book states that it's more available than the bass oboe. I'll answer this. Bass oboes are much more commonly available than Heckelphones. I mean, you said there's 13 bass oboes in the UK, and how many Heckelphones?
2.
So a 13-to-2 ratio. That's, I think, would apply pretty much everywhere.
Yeah.
So for as many Heckelphones as there are, think that there's 6 times as many bass oboes.
About that.
That'd be about right.
Your book might be dated from the early 20th century. That's when it might have been written. So.
Well, and even then, I think if it's an orchestration text, the orchestration tutors just don't know this, and they're basing it off of material that came earlier. And
right.
So you look at like the Strauss edition of Berlioz and says the Heckelphone, a much more superior instrument, and then but they're writing in 1904.
Mm-hmm.
So
when they had no idea that production would stop 10 years later, and what would happen 10 years later, you know.
Right,
so,
right.
History has something to do with this also.
it would be cool if when you're with the Heckelphone player, you could make a comparison video.
Yeah, so we have a very tight schedule. We have a recital to get together in 2 hours and then perform. And then the Heckelphone player, his name is John McDougall, and he is the principal bassoonist for English National Ballet and the BBC Concert Orchestra. And he also plays for English National Opera on all their productions that require the Heckelphone at the Royal Opera House. So he's an incredible guy, really nice guy as well. If we have time, we'll definitely.
Yeah, but you're not going to have a lot.
But yeah, it would be useful to do that.
Could you go over the concrete differences between a bass oboe and a Heckelphone? I really don't know much about either of these instruments, so I'm just trying to learn. Okay.
Sure.
So.
The wood, firstly.
The wood is absolutely different. So the wood on the bass oboe is made of grenadilla wood, and the Heckelphone is made out of maple.
Like a bassoon.
Right, which means that in theory the Heckelphone should be lighter because it's a less dense wood.
Sure. Yeah. The bore is a lot wider on the Heckelphone. It's a lot, probably about that much bigger. Maybe a little bit less. Maybe like that. You can't really see. But it's bigger.
Yeah, so the bore on the Heckelphone is... The old way of describing it is when you double the length of an instrument, you double the internal area of a cross-section. So if you have an area at one point on an oboe that's 1 square centimeter, you're going to then, on the same spot on the bass oboe, double that area to 2 square centimeters. The Heckelphone, instead of doubling the area, doubles the diameter.
Right. Okay.
And so if you have if it's 1 centimeter across, it's now 2 centimeters across. And so, and I'm not going to do the math on that, but it gets, I got to do 2 pi r squared or something. Just regular pi r squared.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Other things that are different are the crook or the vocal, as you guys say over here.
It's almost more appropriate to call that a crook because it really does look.
Crook. So the bass oboe is like an S bend, is a bit more aggressive than a bass clarinet. The Heckelphone goes up and straight, basically. And then the bell is different as well on the Heckelphone. It doesn't. I need to put up this fan. So it doesn't come down. It kind of is a lot more circular.
Yeah,
more of a sphere than it is an onion or grenade. Which then gives it a different tone, and the reeds are different as well.
Yeah, and the reed is much more like my bassoon reed. Let's see. And then there's, of course, most Heckelphones will go down to low A, and most bass oboes go down to low B. But there are bass oboes that go to B flat. The new Monig bass oboes go to A.
Yep.
And there are older Heckelphones that only go down to B or B flat. So it muddies the water there, but you could say 90% of Heckelphones go to A and 90% of bass oboes go to B.
Yeah. I would say also that the Heckelphone is louder. There's a few videos on YouTube of people playing. So if you understand German, there's a really good video.
Yeah, the Stuttgart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's playing an excerpt of Pan, which is from Benjamin Britten's Six Metamorphoses. And it's originally for oboe. But you can hear the tonal qualities are very similar, but it's slightly different.
Let's see. Are there any particular works for bass oboe you feel composers / orchestrators should listen to or be aware of?
Well, I think they should be aware of the repertoire that there is for the bass oboe, which is really quite minimal, and how it's used within the orchestra. So, as part of my PhD, what I'd be really excited to sort of look forward to is instrument pairings and how the bass oboe could complement other instruments within the orchestra. If you listen to Strauss's Salome, there's a solo for the Heckelphone which is with the cello, and is it the viola as well, or is it just the cello?
I'd have to look at my score. But I think the English horn's playing with it too.
Right, so it complements that lower.
You want to play that? Since I think you've got it.
Yes. So this is one of the solos from Strauss's.
There it is.
Salome opera.
Dance of the Seven Veils.
Sorry, that's really dry.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
And
that...
it keeps going. But
Oh,
and on the Heckelphone, it's even bigger and a little bit bolder. And I find when I study Strauss's use of the Heckelphone, that a lot of times he's pairing it with the horns.
Right.
And that he just uses it to kind of bolster the horns a little bit. Because
Sure.
it's so powerful.
Yeah, because if you think about a lot of like Brahms and even Bach and Haydn, when the bassoon is being used as like a sort of third horn sometimes, or like the horn is, they can be paired really nice.
Right, yeah. So a lot of times you'll have 4 horns and 2 bassoons, and bassoons 1 and 2 are acting as horns 5 and 6.
Yeah, so I think that could, there's a thought that came over me this morning actually, and I think that could be a really good use of the bass oboe, just how it's used with the bassoon to sort of augment the horn section. I think solos that the composers should be aware of are definitely the Planets solos, Percy Grainger solo in The Warrior. And just sort of get as informed as possible. There really aren't that many pieces that involve the bass oboe, and that's kind of the reason why I bought one and why I'm trying to expand the repertoire and sort of get it known. So yeah, it's kind of hopefully a good couple of years, and then
then there's a whole bunch of Delius pieces that call for it.
Right.
That when they get played, most often is the Dance Rhapsody No. 1.
Sure.
That opens with a big bass oboe solo.
Great.
You know that one?
No, I don't.
No, okay. I'll get that out for you at some point. But Delius kind of inspired Grainger and Holst.
Sure.
So he started the bass oboe trend in England.
Yeah, which is strange because it's a French instrument and no French
No,
composers.
I don't know a single French piece that calls for it. You're right.
It's obscure piece.
It's mostly centered around the English composers.
Yeah, which is great, but also
Yeah.
bizarre.
Okay. Let's see. Are there any special effects that could be used in writing for a bass oboe?
So you can do as much extended techniques as you can on the oboe normally, so like multiphonics. So you can do multiphonics easily enough. You can do double trilling. You can do quarter tones quite easily, like because the instrument is so big. If I just add my B key, it can make quarter tones quite easily. Around that area, which is quite nice.
Yeah.
You can flutter tongue.
If you're able to.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people who can't flutter tongue.
Kind of down to the performer, I suppose. Yeah, and then just
basically anything the oboe can do, the bass oboe can do.
Right. Yeah. So one of my chapters in my PhD will be transferability of extended techniques from the oboe to the bass oboe.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully in like 4 or 5 years' time you'll be able to see.
Yeah. How does fast technical playing compare to the oboe?
So I'm trying to think about this because
I would think it'd be just a hair slower just because everything is bigger.
Yeah, right. But I don't know if it is because when you're playing slurred and you can yeah, I mean you can still play fast excerpts, fast I mean, it's still fine, you know.
Yeah.
Tonguing is a bit different because the reed is slightly different, but
And it comes in at a slightly different angle.
yeah. Or you can still tongue quite fast. I don't double tongue, so I'm sure you can do that too. So really, I think what a sort of misconception will be, and I think this is the same with the English horn as well, that it is really good for what it does in terms of the slow, beautiful melodies, like haunted melodies that you can achieve with the English horn. And I'm sure you can do the same with the bass oboe as well, just nothing's really been written. But I would also think not to pigeonhole it as to that's all it can do, because it can do fast, virtuosic things.
Yeah, and the more I hear you play up in that upper register, the more I'm thinking, it sounds more, it sounds less melancholy than the English horn at times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A lot of people have said that it sounds like a soprano sax when you're up in the really high. I don't know.
Well, let's grab a soprano sax and see.
Yeah.
I've got one on the other side of the room.
Yeah, so people say they can kind of hear differences.
I don't think I can get there.
This is where it all goes wrong.
Mm-hmm.
We have about 100 instruments in this room, so it's one of it.
It's not 100. It's more like 30. Okay, so what notes were those?
For me, a high G. So
High G. So. There really is a nice tonal similarity there.
Play an A maybe.
That's shocking how close the sound is. Yeah.
Yeah, and then this is things that could be explored. Who would have thought of pairing a bass oboe with a soprano sax? You know,
but it works. It works surprisingly well.
Yeah. So it's limitless, actually.
Yeah.
Kind of,
Are there any pairings you feel don't work? I as a composer, I'll try and answer that. I think a creative composer can make any pairing between any two instruments work. I mean, the example I'll use of this is something like Hindemith's sonata not sonata, but concerto for trumpet and bassoon. Two instruments I would not put together, but Hindemith makes a concerto for it too.
Yeah, I would probably say trombone might not work next to this.
Surprisingly, though, a trombone and English horn paired together do work.
Right.
There's some stuff in Prokofiev's Alexander Nevsky that's trombone and English horn.
Right.
And it works really well.
Yeah.
It's the trombone's really sensitive and even muted works.
Mm-hmm.
So
there's a group called New Noise, which is an oboe and percussion duo based in the UK. And what's really interesting about that group is how they pair different orchestral percussion with the oboe or the cor anglais or the oboe d'amore. They have 2 albums which are on, I think they're on Spotify, if not they're on YouTube. And you can really hear the different sort of voicing and colours that you can achieve with these instruments. And I'm sure, well, maybe if Janie had a bass oboe, she would have included one of those as well. Hi, Janie.
Is the bass oboe most common in symphonic orchestras, or are they used in concert bands as well? I'll answer that. There's one piece in the band repertoire that calls for bass oboe, and most of the times when it is performed, English horn is used instead. That's a Granger's Children's March. And it 1918, and you want to play the opening bass oboe part?
This is. Ooh.
It's
Something
literally
exciting.
like F scales.
Oh, I can do it.
What's the And that's the extent of the Bass Oboe repertoire in concert band music. I mean, there may be some more obscure pieces. The American Wind Symphony, they have a catalog, and there's a few pieces in there that call for Heckelphone, because that group owns a Heckelphone. But for actual Bass Oboe, no.
And I think it would be used more in symphonic orchestras. If you notice, like a lot of the dates of when this music was all written, it's all pre-World War One, around World War One time, where you think about the orchestras, think about the Rite of Spring, the Planets, Symphony Fantastique as well, perhaps, like how the orchestras are getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then think about what happened in World War One in Europe, and how that will inform things like money and how these orchestras can no longer afford to have as many musicians, because most of them are probably fighting. If you think about also, only men were allowed to play in orchestras back then, and only men were enlisted to into the world wars, and the millions and millions of people that died in World War One.
That changed how we orchestrate music.
Yeah, and from both sides as well, the Germans, the English, the French.
You don't see the big orchestral works after World War One, and the few that do exist, like the Planets, that's right at the tail end, was started before World War One, but finished right as it ended.
And then if you think about when these instruments started to appear at the end of the 19th century, that only gives a window of like 20 years where music was being written for these instruments. And when the orchestra size depleted, then what's the need for it, really? And I think it's such a shame, because the instrument came just at the wrong time.
Yeah.
If it was 50 years previous, then you would have seen it a lot more in things like Berlioz
and to that, you've got very austere times in the 20s, 30s, 40s, and then you get in the 40s World War II. So that shuts production on all these instruments, because they're all being made mostly in Paris, which is Nazi occupied. So then you got to wait till the 50s, and in the 50s it's all about 12-tone and avant-garde stuff, and nobody's writing really orchestral stuff. And it's only in the last 20 years probably that composers are starting to look at these things again.
Yeah, and it's a good thing to sort of bear in mind when thinking about how history, politics inform art, and sort of how we react to these sort of catastrophic events. And I never really thought about it up until about 3 or 4 years ago, when I was trying to put this together as to why there was no repertoire and why it was so underutilized. And it kind of makes sense.
Yeah. Alpha Clyde would be an interesting pairing. Yes, it would. Since the instrument is rare, you think it would be wise to make Q notes in another instrument. What instruments would you advise to replace the bass oboe in A, symphonic orchestras, or B, concert bands?
I wouldn't replace it. Just use it.
Okay, so case in point, the Richardson Symphony here last week did the Planets, but they couldn't get a bass oboe.
Right. Okay.
So what do? Holst actually answered that question, and he cued all the parts. Typically, the bass clarinet part, which is, I think, probably the worst one, because it's so different. But I think he did that just because the bass clarinet was the instrument not playing.
Yeah.
It could do that. First choices would always be English horn.
If it's not too low.
Yeah.
Then.
And then if it goes too low, it has to go to bassoon.
Yeah.
So.
Or bassoon. If in wind band, I mean, what the oboe family doesn't have, which the saxophone family does, is a soprano, alto, tenor, and bass instrument. So the bass oboe is technically the tenor. It's like a tenor saxophone. It has the same range. So yeah, in wind band, replace it with the tenor saxophone, perhaps. Like
Yeah, I would tend to agree there. And if you have the right mouthpiece on a tenor sax, it can get a little bit more bass oboe-like sound. And surprisingly, that is what Bela Bartok did in his Wooden Prince, his ballet. He includes two saxophones, and even in the score, he places the saxophones right underneath the oboes and above the clarinets. Oh, wow. So it's oboe, English horn, alto sax, bari sax.
Cool.
And it works to kind of fill out the oboe section, which is interesting. Okay. Yes, Mikey has a YouTube channel under his name. If not been mentioned, just subscribe. So you're getting subscribers from this.
I only have 2 videos up.
Yeah.
My goal was to make more, but
yeah,
I've had a pretty busy year touring and stuff. So,
what price range would a professional bass oboe be in?
So, I mean, all bass oboes will be professional.
Yeah. That's another thing too that we can get into.
Yeah. So, I mean, I can only speak in English pounds because I don't really know how much they are over here in America. But for a brand new bass oboe made by Mernig or Lorre are around £13,000, which is then another issue that you get is the practicality, accessibility and affordability of the instrument. So once you've bought your oboe, which is, I mean this is all speaking new, you can get them cheaper second hand. You've bought your brand new oboe, which is £7,000. You've then got your English horn that you need. I mean, I just brought one for £10,500. And then you then spend another £13,000 on the bass oboe, but really you'd need an oboe d'amore more than you need the bass, so that's like another £9,000.
Yeah.
So you're speaking about £50,000 in general. But I mean, I was quite lucky. I got this second hand. It was only a year old, and it was £6,900. Basically brand new and basically half price. So I was very lucky, and that's when I saw the instrument for sale, and I saw what could be done and what was missing, and I was just like, this is a great opportunity, I can't pass this up, I'm going to buy it.
Yeah, as you do.
Yeah. So I don't know how that converts into dollars as well.
So I would say, so you said about 13?
Yeah.
Probably
18,000, 20,000?
I don't think it's that much. Oh. Well, because the pound's so weak right now.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks Brexit.
Yeah. Political. We'll stay away from political stuff right now. But it's probably about 15, I would think.
Right, okay.
Somewhere around there, 15, 16.
Sure.
And then what the Lupaphone's running about 25?
25,000
yeah,
pounds.
£25,000.
So about $30,000.
Yeah, so about.
But it might be different compared to that if you buy them over here, or I don't know.
Yeah, well, because we don't have the VAT.
Right, and you'd have to transfer to euros because
Right.
if you're buying from Lorre, they take it in euros. So, I mean, it would be, and obviously Mernig in Germany, they are in euros too. So it would be the dollar to the euro rather than to the pound. So.
Yeah, so it's all going to depend on exchange rates at the time.
Sure.
And imports. And, we could get screwed over on imports.
Yeah.
Our government. Okay, we're not going to talk about that. I think that the Hindemith Trio, he specified that the Heckelphone part can be played by the C melody sax. Yes, it can. So there's also a part in it for a B-flat tenor sax. So you can play it on B-flat tenor, C tenor, or Heckelphone. It actually doesn't work very well on bass oboe because
it goes too low.
Yeah, it goes down to a low B-flat.
Yeah, it's
one low B-flat.
Yeah, I haven't even attempted to play it, to be honest. I know John has played it quite a lot of times. He was over in Germany playing it the other week. So yeah, he loves it.
If you had a low B flat extension on here,
yeah, I could give it a go. But
yeah,
we were talking about this yesterday in the car, and whether I've never really played a Heckelphone part on the bass oboe in orchestra. I've only ever played the bass oboe part, and in England, it seems as though we have the difference of where our country's quite small, and you can get from Edinburgh to London in a day, and back again if you need to. So a lot of the professional orchestras would prefer to have what's written in the score, so having a Heckelphone rather than a bass oboe.
Which is preferable.
So the John and John, who both own the Heckelphones, the working Heckelphones in England, they take a lot of the work for Heckelphone when it's needed with Opera North and English National Opera. And I've never been called to play like Alpine Symphony on the bass oboe, which I would love to do. But I think, especially on the continent, and I think over here, I think it is interchangeable. It doesn't really matter.
Well, on the continent, I think that you tend to use, particularly in Germany, they're going to use Heckelphone far more often.
See, I've seen actually them using bass oboe more than that, because I think they're just as rare over there now as what they are.
But here in the U.S., I have seen a Heckelphone in my life once, and I've held and played several bass oboes before. But the Dallas Symphony this weekend, in fact, right now as we record this, is playing the Alpine Symphony, and the only instrument available to play that for hundreds of miles around is the bass oboe. There is no Heckelphone. There probably is no working Heckelphone in Texas,
right?
Which is this just shows you how rare they are. Let's see. I want to compliment you on your knowledge of all the repertoire. Well, thanks. That's kind of, I know my repertoire for the weird instruments pretty backwards and forwards. I'm a saxophonist, and it's definitely not common to own a C sax. Well, I've got one sitting right there. At least not in Scandinavia. In the U.S., you can find them because the C melody sax is, after soprano, alto, tenor, and bari, is literally the most common because they were made in the tens, if not hundreds of thousands, back in the 20s. Write a spring bassoon solo, please.
I don't know it.
You don't know it?
No. Well, I obviously know it, but I don't know it. It starts on a C. That's all I can do.
You want me? No, it's because it's in tenor clef.
I only read treble, sorry guys.
Here, I'll grab the bassoon. E.
Trying to work out, but
E.
something like that. I don't know.
So, E, C, B, C, B, G, E, B, A. Yeah. And then compare that to bassoon. It's easy. Just play "We Are the Champions" chorus with a different rhythm.
I don't know that either. Yeah.
That I remember that meme popped up a few weeks ago. It's like, oh wow, huh? But yeah. So actually, let's talk about some differences between the bassoon and the bass oboe because I've got it here. Mm-hmm. So let's do a comparison. Like low B. I'm a little flat. So I'll play the planet solo, then you play the planet solo.
And in the orchestra, the horn takes over that B, and the blend is really nice. And that's also something nice to think about those instruments. The timbres work well as a trio. It could be a nice trio. Yeah,
horn, bassoon, and bass. Yeah, that would work quite well. a bass oboe tenaroon comparison. If I had a tenaroon, we would. But the tenaroon is so much brighter in sound. Hey, you want to try and play some of my theme?
Of what, sorry?
My piece?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, let's just play the first couple pages. So we're gonna attempt to play a little bit of my trio that he's gonna be premiering next month. But of course we're gonna not have the Heckelphone part. Let's not do page 3 because page 3 sucks. Page 3 is so hard.
It's just hard.
Yeah.
On jet lag.
Yeah. So let's start at measure 3. Yeah. Why did I write for the bassoon to start on a low D? It's a terrible note of the instrument. Go pick up the C. That's a good enough place to stop.
Cool.
Yeah, but that's a little bit of the trio there, and obviously the third part's missing because the Heckelphone and Heckelphone player is in England. What would be an interesting chorus is bass oboe tenor comparison. Okay, that's yeah. So I think we're caught up in all the questions. Let's see. You want to try the Warrior solo?
Yeah.
I think put it on the ground. Oh, that's the other. It's this one.
Oh, right. Yeah, sorry.
So we're going to look at the Warriors solo from Granger's, the big solo from Granger's Warriors. If we can find it, there it is. Now the problem is this is written in bass clef, and so Mikey's having to transpose a little bit. So he'll play it first on bass oboe, but then I'll play it on bassoon.
Where does it go?
E. One more note.
Cool.
Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing now on bassoon. Come on, seat strap. See if I can get what I can see. Come on, Reed. So yeah, it's really a pretty drastic difference in timbre for me between the two instruments, playing the same parts. Let's see, how does the timbre differ between English horn on the same sounding pitches?
I have mine with me.
Damn you, Norwegian Air.
Great airline. Yeah, so the difference in the sound, the English horn wouldn't be as dark.
This is a little chocolatier.
Yeah, I would describe the sound on the bass oboe like a lot more darker and woodier. More like a marimba, how like the low parts of the marimba sound, I would say. That kind of timbre, which would be a nice pairing as well, low marimba with bass oboe.
Yeah. Well, that's what that's going on in that, is there's marimba, I think. Well, yeah, up at the top.
Yeah. So, with the English horn, I would say the timbre on those notes especially, so I'm playing a B, that would be a... Is it an F?
Written F sharp.
F sharp, okay, so...
No, it'd be... Yeah.
The English horn wouldn't go that low either, so it'd have to be an octave higher if you want the full melody uninterrupted, because this goes down to the low B. So that wouldn't be achievable on the English horn, so it'd all have to sound an octave higher. So yeah, I think obviously it'd be higher pitched. It would just have a completely different characteristic, I think. It'd be a bit more rich,
it's
maybe.
different shades within the same general tone color.
Yeah.
Milk chocolate versus dark chocolate.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. What's the score order for the trio? A bass oboe, Heckelphone, and bassoon. So if you're putting bass oboe and Heckelphone together, the bass oboe really should go above the Heckelphone. Even though they're the same pitch, they have the same function. The Heckelphone does go with a full step lower. So
And the bass can go higher.
right. So yeah, it's good function there that, you know.
Should we show them the example?
I don't think they'd be able to see it.
Alright.
How does playing the loophophone compare to the bass oboe? And I think we talked about that earlier, so we can do a little bit.
I can recap a little bit. So, the loophophone kind of is the same color, so it's black like the oboe, bass oboe rather than the Heckelphone. It's a lot bigger and comes down and then loops up and has a bell that kind of is so much it's like a football on the end, like a English soccer ball with like a hole, and it really it's a really fat big sound.
It's a lot louder.
Much louder, and yeah.
Well, how was the quiet end on it?
I only had like half an hour and 45 minutes with it, and it was about a year and a half ago, so I can't really remember.
And it was not in a small studio. It was in a convention hall.
Yeah, at the IDRS in Granada in Spain last year. The thing with the Heckelphone as well is that I was thinking, because it has so much more key work, you've got...
with the loopophone.
On the loopophone, you have 2 keys here on the back, which is your...
A and A flat, I think.
A and A flat, yeah, and then your B flat key is here. Then you have like loads more here, then loads more there.
No, I don't think they're here. I think they're up here for the left thumb.
The one I played on was on here.
Really?
Yeah.
Because the one I've got photos of has the keywork up here for the left thumb. For the G, F sharp, and F are for the left thumb.
Yeah, and it was all in like a clarinet, like a bass clarinet.
Well, that's bizarre.
And then you have a 4th octave key as well as a 3rd octave key. And yeah, it's kind of like you have to learn a whole new technique for those lower notes. So once you have a sort of standardized technique for the oboe, and
then you have to add on.
You've then got to learn new combinations. So I guess it would be a lot of scales and 3rds and 4ths practice that you'd have to do to build that technique as strong as the rest of the technique on the instrument.
And it'd be something that you would really want a specialized player on it. It wouldn't be something that...
Yeah, you couldn't just pick it up, I don't think. Because also the reed is different, and then that gets you even further away from like a Heckelphone technique and for a bassoonist, because then you're adding loads completely new. Completely.
Yeah. I had some technical difficulties. I'm sorry if I sent the first time. If this sent the first time, you're singing it. But are there any particular notes or a combination of notes that are hard or don't sound good?
Surprisingly for me, the hardest note is at the top F sharp.
Which pops right out the first time.
Yeah, just feels a bit less open as, say, the G and the E around it.
Oh yeah, I can definitely hear a tonal difference.
Just feels a lot more shut off, you know? It's just a bit of a nasty note. But the thing that's scary is the low B in Saturn is PP. So you have to really just lower your jaw. The playing technique is slightly more extreme than the English horn in terms of how you have to have your jaw really low and your throat really, really open and so much support. If you have that in place, then
yeah.
It should, I mean, this reed I'm playing on is 3 years old. And
which is like beyond, that's like an Egyptian mummy for oboe players.
Right. And I've done countless recitals on it, and it's pretty chipped, it's pretty broke, but it still works fine. So if it's not broke, don't fix it, you know.
Okay, here's a good one. As a performer, what do you think about the possibility of a contrabass oboe?
Ooh.
It would basically be the same size as this.
So, for me, the weirder the better. The more strange and more out there the instruments are, for me, I'm like, yeah, cool, let's do it.
I'm still surprised that it hasn't been done, because according to records, Loré was planning to do one around 1900.
Right, okay.
And never happened.
I'll ask Alain when I'm next in Paris. the owner of Loré.
But yeah, so he's talking about the actual owner of Loré. You know him, right?
Yeah.
But
yeah,
there's been Strauss talks about it some in his update of Berlioz. I'm of the opinion, yeah, please. I'd love to hear that kind of timbre extended down.
Yeah. I don't know how it'd work in terms of
shape.
Yeah, it'd have to go down and back up, I think, and then.
Well, I mean, you'd be looking at an instrument the same size as that Barry sax, basically.
Yeah, I think the thing with the Barry sax, because it's made of metal, it's quite easy to make these loops. You know, unless you had like a metal crook, like a bass clarinet.
Well, yeah, I mean, you would do something like that, a vocal like this. I mean, it's the same size as the bassoon.
Right. Okay.
So I mean that, and you've already how to do the bend in it with the loop
The
phone.
loop phone, yeah, so just
So-
extend it out. Yeah, go for it. In my mind, yeah. It would have to be something like, would it be a whole octave lower than this? So 2 octaves lower than an oboe?
Well, I mean, there's a question here about what about one in F, so like a bass English horn.
Yeah.
That would essentially be the same size as the loop phone.
Yeah, that would just be the loop phone, surely.
But
It goes down to an F.
But that it would be the fundamental scale would be the F scale, so
Uh-huh.
the C scale without the extended notes, and then you could take that and extend it.
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe someone will do it one day.
Maybe that's the thing. Oboe makers generally are much more conservative. They're not going to do a lot of experiments.
Yeah. It's the cost as well, I suppose.
Yeah.
And
Because the cost in making one of these is
extortionate.
yeah,
Deposit on a house.
yeah.
Who knows? If I win the lottery, then I'll make one for you.
It requires having to play first, right?
Yeah. I'll figure it out.
So those notes you're talking about, are they the same difficulty on oboe?
No, so on the oboe, for me, actually, the top F sharp sings the best on my instrument and how I play. For me, I absolutely adore the top F sharp. For some reason, it
sings.
It sings.
But the G,
Yeah, A is not very nice. So a lot of orchestral players, if you're playing like second oboe, third oboe, you have no need for your oboe to go that high because you're always no higher than a D really.
yeah.
Whilst playing second. So you make your reeds a lot softer so that you can sit under your first oboe player. Because I do a lot of contemporary and new music, I play on much harder reeds. So for me, going up to even a C is possible, and like not a
On regular oboe.
yeah
Yeah.
It's not an uncommon thing to be able to do, and then you have more ability to do more multiphonics because your reed has a bit more resistance.
But you wouldn't use that for a second oboe.
But I wouldn't play that for second oboe or third oboe.
No.
So yeah, for me, the F sharp sounds best on my oboe. Harder notes, like just low and quiet. Everyone hates doing that.
Yeah. In fact, that brings up one of the next questions. From what I understand, playing low quiet is hard on all members of the oboe family.
More so on the oboe than say the English horn or the bass, and so much more on the oboe d'amore. But there's not much call for the oboe d'amore to have to do that. Oboe is
It does not like the low B flat.
no. If you want to piss off your oboe player, then do that.
Dvorak violin concerto.
Just any Dvorak, really.
Yeah.
It's all,
I put that in my book as an example of what not to do.
well, apparently his wife was having an affair with the second oboe player, and that's why he did it.
Really?
That's all I've heard.
Oh, well, that would make sense.
So, yeah, really anywhere lower than the E. But on here, it's easier to sort of play quieter. But then your note will crack if you go any too loud. It turns into a harmonic.
Would like a wire on the reed help to keep it open a little bit more?
I'm not sure. I don't really wire my reeds. to be
Okay.
honest.
Let's see what else we got. We talked about like a bass English horn, baritone, oboe, and F. I want one.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think we should just score for instruments we want to exist and wait for the makers to catch up and make it a really important part. That is such a minefield there. Only person who's ever gotten away with that in history is Richard Wagner. With something like the Wagner tuba. And he said, I want these instruments to sound like a cross between a horn and a trombone. I want to be able to play by a hornist. You go make them. And if a composer has that kind of working relationship with an instrument maker, it could work. I would love to have that kind of relationship with an instrument maker.
An influence as well.
Yeah.
You know?
You've got to have a lot of influences. You've got to be one of the top composers in the world to be able to do that, or have a lot of money.
Yeah. Well, if you so I don't know if you guys are familiar with English oboe is called Christopher Redgate, and he's actually developed and created a new system for the oboe, which allows for much more sort of multiphonic possibilities, more quarter tone possibilities, like the Kingma flute system for the alto and bass flutes, where you can just simply play quarter tones much easier than having to do complex fingerings. It's the 21st century oboe, which if you just Google that, it will come up and you'll be able to see Chris's work. That was funded through various bodies like the Royal Academy of Music, Arts Council, and various other things, where he was able to go to Howarths and say, I've got this amount of money, this is what I want to do, can we collaborate and work together? Which is also, I heard of a horn player in Germany, French horn player, and it's a double-belled horn.
Yeah, well, it's for brass instruments. That's super easy to do, because with brass instruments, that's something that repair techs can do easily, is to modify brass instruments and create new sizes or styles of brass instruments, because it's just all soldering and cutting of brass tubing. Whereas with a woodwind, you have to calculate the distance between every tone hole, and it's just not adding more tubing. And so woodwind instruments are so much more difficult on that. So something like these extra large oboes, you would need a long design process. You would need a major amount of funding. You would need the machining skill.
Yeah, the skill.
And you've got to have a company that's going to be willing to work with you on that. And I don't know of any of the companies that would. I don't think Luray would.
It's something that you'd have to go with them with a realised idea and with realised. I'm sure. I mean, Alain is very like open-minded and he's very forward-thinking. And I think if you had it all set up, he would do it for you. I think if you had money, like he'd do it. Like, I mean, he doesn't want to work for money.
Well, yeah. I don't think Fox would here in the U.S.
Right.
Because they've never really expanded past oboe, English horn, bassoon, contrabassoon.
I know that Luray have made they do make to order. So like Alex Klein has a oboe that goes for low A.
Right.
Sounds a lot more oboe de more like. And like they made my English horn with a low B flat in a particular wood. Like they are quite accommodating, and I'm sure even like Wolf might make something.
Wolf might be the only one that you could do it, but with Guntram's passing, they really haven't done much R&D in the past. Well, since the Lupophone came out, really.
Yeah, so I think
maybe Eppelsheim.
Right. Yeah.
But making some more connections in my orchestration book, it states that the low notes in the English horn are not nearly as hard as on the oboe. Is this true?
So as in like playing low notes on the English horn compared to playing low notes on the oboe?
Yeah.
Yeah, low notes on the English horn are much easier.
Yeah, it's designed for that.
You have more reed, you have more flexibility, you have more...
So yeah, bigger the reed, the easier it is to control.
Right.
And so, which is why oboe, embouchure, and reed-wise is much more difficult than bassoon. Only reason bassoon can be considered more difficult is the fingering system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but whereas how you... And even the reed, where you make a bassoon reed compared to how you make an oboe reed...
It's very different.
I think the oboe is much more complex.
The oboe reed structure is more complex, yes, but
Yeah.
it probably takes longer to make a bassoon
Right.
reed. Because we don't have a staple, so we have to worry about the tube forming here. So that everything here except for the binding holding it is cane.
Right.
Whereas you have a metal and cork piece that you can tie the reed to.
Yeah.
And always have that perfect seal down here.
Sure.
It goes on or into the instrument. You've mentioned quarter tones. Are most of the quarter tones accessible throughout the range of the bass oboe?
I've never really explored quarter tones, to be honest.
Yeah, that's a real specialist area, and you know, as a fellow double reed player, I've never had to play quarter tones. You probably play a little bit more new music than I do, but
Yeah, so I mean, I have done them, and it is very specialist. It takes a long time to kind of find the correct fingerings, and from oboist to oboist,
everybody uses something different.
it will differ because your embouchure, your reed, your instrument.
On bassoon, I mean, I don't have to change fingerings. I could just do it all with my lip, and I'm sure you could probably do something similar.
I don't know. Let's have a look.
It always goes down. You can always go down. You can't go up.
Just sounds like a beginner.
No, it does.
Nice. But yeah, you can do like. I mean, yeah.
There are ways to do it, but we don't really use quarter tones often.
Yeah, it really is more of what you'd collaborate with your performer. If you're as a composer, you collaborate with your performer and say, what is it that you can and can't do? If you can do quarter tones, have you tried doing this? Depending on exactly the kind of piece that you'd be wanting to write as well. If you are mad crazy for some quarter tones, like cool.
You've limited the number of players who are going to be able to play your music, though.
Yeah.
And this is one big difference between double reeds and flutes. Flute players are all over this stuff.
But I think the way the technique of the flute is much easier than the oboe.
Exactly. So. And part of this is that we were talking about this yesterday, the conservative nature of double reed players. Is your double reed players are really your most conservative of the woodwinds. Oboe players more conservative than bassoon players.
Not me then.
No. We're caught up on questions for now, so keep them coming. We'll probably go for a little bit longer. You want to play something else?
Yeah, let's do an excerpt from. So someone spoke earlier about sort of flexibility of the oboe, of the bass oboe, and sort of how fast and stuff that you can play. So this is one of the excerpts from Uranus, from the planets. If you do ever play this, make sure you're listening to the timpani because they're going to be your lifeline for this.
Yeah.
I mean, it goes like for ages and it just changes. But, I mean, there are some bits then where you have like... You can get around quite quickly. Sorry, my reed is really dry and just closed. So, sounds rank. But yeah, you in the planets, it's used. I guess that would be virtuosic playing in a way.
Yeah, you give that to an oboe player. If on just a regular oboe, that's like, no, I don't want to play that.
Yeah, it's quite groovy. What else? Oh, so then you have the
Mercury,
yeah. So a little hint, I suppose, for Mercury. Where is it? We've got Mars. This is so much paper everywhere. Okay, Mercury. You have a few exposed areas in this. Most notably, just before figure 6. The hard thing about playing this in a way is also like, depending on your conductor, depends on what time you're in. Either 2, 3, or 1. I've done it in all of them at various speeds. Yeah. Some people do it fast, some people do it slow. Like,
I would think that it would make most sense in 1.
Right, you'd think, but not everyone does. Yeah, so you have quick things like this, and lots of times when when you're starting the run up with the rest of your section, you start the run. It carries on throughout the rest of the instruments. And then between figure 4 and figure 5, you have this nice melody that's in unison with the bassoons and clarinets, and then you finish with. And then whenever I'm playing this, I'd never take my oboe away, and I'm just looking at the conductor, because you then have this pause, and then this really. You're good just to memorize those 4 notes, because then you can just look at your conductor, and then the English horn follows in straight after that. I suppose also you have that scale at the end of the. Here you you are with the sort of rest of the wind and the other oboes.
Is that the highest note in the piece?
The B flat.
Uh-huh.
I think it might be, actually, because again, when this would have been written, I'm sure it would have been one of the first extensive pieces for the bass oboe.
Right. You've got this. You've got the Delia stuff that came before, and this is 1918. Yeah, I mean, Salome is 1905 for Heckelphone. That goes up to F, but yeah.
Oh wow.
But after that, Strauss never wrote that high again.
Because the player might have been like,
yeah.
Let's not do that.
Are the fingerings the same as the oboe?
So we use a different system over in England, where we have this thumb plate, and the 3rd octave key is there. I don't know if you can see that. So we have different fingering system over in the UK, and we're the only country that does it, really.
And from what I understand, it actually makes more acoustic sense than the standard conservatory finger.
So there's a whole thing about the conservatory C's being quite saggy and thin.
And you don't have that problem.
But we don't have that problem. But it's called a gilet system, so I can use the French and the English fingering, so I can play C like this too. You can hear the difference with the B flat too. The conservatoire B flat sounds nicer than the English B flat. It's darker and fuller. So for the high notes, I mean, on my oboe, I play on a Howarth oboe. My oboe d'amore is a Marigot, my cor anglais is a Loré, and this is a Loré too. For this instrument, what works best is the French long fingerings rather than the English fingerings. So for this, I do use, like for instance, that is my E with the G sharp, G,
for high.
A, yeah, for the top E. And then the E flat, D, and E key, and then for F, just lift up and push this down, then F sharp like this, and then G. So yeah, I have to remember a lot of the time, because my oboe d'amore is a little bit older, it's from like the 80s. That uses a different fingering system for those high notes compared to my oboe, compared to this, and then the English horn I only got in June. So yeah, it's kind of learning and remembering what instrument you're on.
Yeah. Let's see. I didn't even know they made thumb plate bass oboes. Well, there's one. Have I written anything for bass oboe? Yes, I have. Quite a bit. Extensive part in actually symphonies 1, 2, and 3. I don't talk about Symphony 1 often because it's actually a smaller piece. It's for a double reed ensemble, so obviously there's bass oboe there, a big part in Symphony 2. And Symphony 3 is actually a lupophone part. I have it in my band piece Black Mass, and then the trio that he'll be playing next month. And have I put it in anything else? I don't think so. I think that's the extent of it. I've watched a video of an octave bassoon recently and then compared it to the sound of the bass oboe. The bass oboe to me has a more nasally sound than the octave bassoon. I would disagree with that because I've actually played both instruments in the same day, probably within the same hour. And octave bassoon is very buzzy, toy-like, and whereas this has a very meaty rich and sonorous sound. The bass, the octave, the alto bassoon is just, it's super buzzy no matter what you do.
I didn't really know what an octave bassoon is.
A full octave higher than this, so even smaller than the tenor room.
Right, okay. Yeah, I think, again, it depends on performer as well, I think, with the, with the bass oboe.
Yeah, and with the octave bassoon is, they're made as small children instruments.
Right.
So they're not designed for professionals. I mean, it's like, okay, we've got 8 keys on here. Have fun. Where's my other 12?
Right. So you can get the Howarth Junior oboes as well, which have 0 key work on. But I mean, you can still make a pretty decent sound. You should check out Celia Craig, who is an Australian oboist. She's uploaded a video to YouTube of her demonstrating the Howarth Junior oboe, and she makes a fantastic sound. She's a fantastic player, so she's going to make a great sound on it. But I think it really depends. I mean, I use quite hard reeds on my bass, and again, I play it a lot more than most players do. And then the English reeds compared to the American reeds have a different sound quality. So I think it all depends on your player and.
Yeah, reed style between countries is so varied because there's American reed and English reed. There's a French reed.
And German
reed, yeah.
And then you have different variations of the English reed, different variations of the American. Like,
yeah.
It's all down, really. I mean, you go to music college and you get told you have to make your reeds this way, you have to do it this way by your professor,
and then you go to a different university and they say something completely different.
Right. So again, subjective, and like what works for you. If you can make it work, and if you can make a great sound, and you can get everything that you need from your reeds, then don't change it.
Yeah.
Like, it's my honest advice.
You know, play what works and what sounds best. The ultimate end goal is the sound produced.
Yeah.
And how easily it can be produced. Because the ease is something that a lot of players forget.
I read something which is really great as well, actually, which is a really good piece of advice, was you always strive for a sound, and you spend so much money on different pieces of equipment, like different clarinet ligatures with different reeds and different barrels and different mouthpieces, or like different crooks and different reeds and different cane, to achieve a certain sound that you're striving for and which you want to aim for. But the difference is that person who's making that sound has a different body to you. They have a different throat, they have a different bone structure, they have a different weight.
Yeah,
so
and that all affects the sound.
Right, so because for us, the sound starts here. It starts in our ribs, in our lungs, and in our stomach.
And I wonder in this regard if saxophone players may have it better off than double reed players, because every saxophone player wants to have their own sound, but the double reed players are trying to copy the sound of someone else.
So I think just embrace the sound that you make and just try and make the best sound that you can. And obviously you can find different cane and different shapes and different reeds and countless, but at what point do you stop looking, you know? When do you...
I think like the top players don't even think about it anymore.
Hopefully, I don't know. It gives us some hope, you know. But yeah.
But all right, do we have any more questions coming in? We've gotten through everything. You want to play anything else? A little bit of Mars, maybe?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Have you played any jazz on Bass Oboe?
Like, surprisingly, yes. So, there is a video out there somewhere of me playing at the IDRS last year, doing an improvised solo with Matthew Banks, who's
on tenor, on French,
on French bassoon, and Jean-Luc Fallon, who is an incredible French jazz oboist. Yeah, I think the beer helped me pluck up the courage to do that.
But I've been to 2 IDRS conferences, and both of them, my tenoroon was involved when I had it. The first one, you know Paul Hansen, the jazz bassoonist?
Yeah.
He did a little impromptu jazz thing on my tenoroon because mine was being shown off at the Wolf booth. And then Michael Rabinowitz, the other big name jazz bassoonist, the next time I was there in Muncie, Indiana, did like a whole on the jazz improv thing. Just borrowed my tenorone and played a whole set on tenorone.
Oh, cool. Awesome. Yeah. Okay. So
yeah, let's hear a little bit of Mars.
This first note is really scary actually at the start because you join in with the bassoons in their melody. And that's what it is, but it's quite scary, you know.
Yeah, it's notes like that are the most difficult, really.
With a nice diminuendo on there, like thanks, Holes.
Yeah, that's getting a lot of power on that too.
Yeah, because I mean, you have to fight against everyone else.
Yeah.
There's like a full 80, 90 piece orchestra just going crazy. Like, you want to be heard, just sat there, you know? But yeah, I mean, this is the thing, the dynamics and the sound can be really full and really big, and you can then come down to like zero, you know? Having that dynamic range is really, and it's in such a nice register.
Yeah, he scored that really well. It's all in that, really second octave.
Yeah.
And this is something that I think a lot of composers forget is that, these instruments, these auxiliary instruments have this nice second register, and that's really where a lot of times they're going to be more powerful. Something like bass flute, in particular, if it's kept down in the bottom range the whole time, it's weak. But if it's in that second range, it'll be able to project a lot more.
Yeah. And then at figure 6, you have this more sort of malicious and kind of...
Yeah, I like the figure 6. And so on and so forth. And that's so, beautiful writing for the instrument. I mean, that's what that instrument does. Great.
Yeah, it's really nice. Really nice.
And that's with, is that with the bassoons?
At the start, yeah. And then around like figure 7, you get the other oboes join in, and it creates such a really nice sound. Like, I have been working with 3 other oboe players to create a quartet of oboe d'amore, English horn, and bass oboe. And there's what was that lady called again?
Jennifer Paul,
who was big in the 90s, 80s probably, a little bit before my time, who worked extensively on expanding the oboe d'amore repertoire, and she had a quartet of the four oboes, and there's quite a bit of repertoire out there on IMSLP.
Oh yeah, because they uploaded every bit of that repertoire to IMSLP, didn't they?
With recordings too. So
yeah.
You should check it out and hear the 4 oboes together and make it a really nice large sound, which is great.
Yeah. Any reason why they don't make smaller reeds for the smaller bassoons more common? Would that change the sound? So when I was playing tenorone, yeah, I would make my reeds quite a bit smaller. And actually the one dimension that really had to be changed was the back. And so the throat on this is too large for most tenorones. And once I changed that, it made the sound much more pleasant. And my old videos are, God, like 10 years old or something, where I would still have the instrument. Yeah, you can hear that, and it will affect that some. I did make some reeds for the octave bassoon, but it was so difficult to make those reeds because I just didn't have it. Hello from someone just joining. So yeah, we've been going hour and 40 minutes.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's
anybody have any other questions? We might play a little bit more. Maybe make the 2-hour mark. Anybody? If I've got all the woodwinds in here, if we want to do any kind of sound comparisons.
We do bass clarinet and bass oboe.
Yeah, we can. It's the. Let me see. The. So something interesting here. These both have the name bass in their name, and they're roughly the same size, but the bass clarinet is nearly an octave lower. This one goes down to. Let me lower this. That's with the Leger reed on there too. That should just speak easily. So play the low B. So the Saturn solo, and then I'll play it on bass clarinet. Is the sopranino oboe present? No.
I don't have it.
Yeah. Norwegian. No, you had to give that one back, didn't you?
So, yeah, it's kind of like, I'm in the process of buying it. I've had it on trial, and I really like it. But at the moment, it's not really a necessity to purchase.
Because there's no literature for it, really.
And I have a tax bill coming up,
Yeah.
so I should probably be an adult and pay a tax bill rather than buy another instrument. So yeah, I plan on, if it's still available, which I think it will be, to have in the new year. But I was playing on it over the summer, and I did a few gigs on it, and it makes an incredible sound.
So my question is, in the high range, what was really kind of the highest you could go on it?
So I was playing G's and G sharps, transposed up to, I think it's a B and a B flat maybe.
Okay. Were A's possible?
Yeah, so the difference with that, so that was an Italian instrument called Patricola, and the fingering system on that again is so much different for the top
right
octave, because the instrument is tiny. I mean, it's like this big.
Yeah,
it's really, well, maybe about that big, but it's really small. And actually, the reeds for that oboe reeds just with the tube sawn shorter. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to
different shaper.
No, exactly. It's just an oboe reed, but with a shorter cork.
Okay.
So yeah, so no difference with embouchure or anything, which is great. But I found the low register really rich and nice.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I've written for that instrument a couple times because I'm the only person crazy enough to do it. But sound comparisons would be really nice. We want to pick an instrument to sound compare.
Let's do Barry sax.
Barry sax? Okay. Let's grab Barry.
So me and a very close friend of mine called Lara Jones, we is it on the mouthpiece that you used on the...
You're right, it is. It's in the other room, isn't it?
We can do tenor sax.
Yeah, let's do...
So
Actually, let's grab the C melody.
Okay. Yes, I have a really close friend called Lara Jones, and we were writing some music for these radio plays over in England, and we were pairing up the bass oboe and the baritone sax together, and we work a lot together, and a lot of the time we're doing soprano sax and oboe d'amore duets, which works really nice timbrely. But then again, the bari sax and the bass oboe work really nicely too.
Yeah. So this is the C melody sax, which is exactly the same pitch-wise as the bass oboe.
I've literally never seen one in my life.
So I can play everything on here as written.
Mm-hmm.
So,
No, maybe.
yeah. It kind of works together, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, the tuning is off, but that's probably me.
Or me, who knows?
Well, the cost difference between these two instruments is appreciable.
Right, okay.
I mean, I paid like $400 for this thing,
Sure.
and you paid a lot more.
Maybe let's do a C major scale.
Okay.
If you start, I'll join in after you. It's nice.
That works. Yeah, it's a nice combination with one another.
Yeah.
Ah. Super loose on the cork here.
I feel like the B on this is so much fuller, you know? I think it's a much more round.
Yeah, it's got that much more overtones.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, bass oboe plus any size of saxophone seems to work because it worked really well with the soprano earlier.
Mm-hmm. It works really nicely with the baritone. Mm-hmm. I've never tried it with the alto, but again, it's the thing, you have a lot of like the Rhapsody for English horn by, I think it might be Percy Grainger. No, I can't remember who the composer is.
Granger didn't do any solo stuff.
No, who was it?
Who's not so cuckoo?
The Rhapsody for English horn, which is also transferable onto alto sax. And you think about pictures at the exhibition, on an exhibition, in the old castle, where the alto saxophone is used and then the English horn responds to the melody. And yeah, there's some nice examples of saxophones and oboes working nicely together.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people forget that really saxophone and oboe are probably each other's closest allies.
Yeah, they can project, they can cut through textures quite easily, especially the oboe. And soprano sax, they're very very similar in terms of timbre.
Yeah, so like this plus tenor, English horn plus alto, regular oboe plus soprano.
Well, I think oboe d'amore works nice with soprano, actually.
Yeah, oboe with sopranino actually works really well.
Yeah.
I've used my sopranino several times to cover oboe parts.
Right.
The only problem is just the sight transposing.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah, that's nasty.
It's not too bad if you think about it in bass clef.
Okay.
This is E flat.
Yeah.
But yeah, if there's no more questions, guys, we've been kind of going at this about 2 hours. It's been fun. But it's getting super hot in this back room.
Yeah. So Texas is like 100 degrees hotter than England.
Yeah, no, it's been stupid hot here for the middle of. It's like 10 degrees hotter than it normally is, and this is the hottest room in the house, and it's the only room we could really do this in.
Yeah.
It's just the nicest looking with the the wall of books.
If anyone has any more questions about the bass oboe and they want to get in touch with me, you can find me on Brett's page quite easily. On Facebook.
Just reach out to me. I can get you his info. And do you have like an artist page?
No, I don't.
You should do that.
I should, but
probably. Because I know a lot of composers really want to be able to write for the instrument.
Sure.
And just logistics say that they can't because it's so hard. And Mikey was the reason that we were going to try and do My Symphony 2. So he was going to come to town, and then we had some backouts at, early on in the process, which just meant the whole thing was not going to happen. And so, had it been together, Mikey's presence would have solidified a performance of Symphony 2 of mine. But, alas, yeah. Will you do a live stream this week? I might. On Thursday night, it's just going to depend. We'll see. I will, if it shows up in the feed, I'm going to do it. Yeah. Thanks. This has been great. Definitely going to write for Bass Oboe. Yeah. So just if you do, let Mikey know.
Yeah. Absolutely.
He wants all the new music.
Yeah. Anything as crazy and out there as possible. And I find the best pieces actually work through a collaborative process between performer and composer. So like, yeah, working together is a really, really great thing. Just sending things forward and backwards just to see what does and doesn't work. If it was a sort of piano and oboe piece that you're wanting to write, more sort of standardized repertoire, then I would really suggest having a listen to a lot of the oboe repertoire that's out there already, like the famous kind of like Poulenc oboe sonata, Hindemith oboe sonata, even the Hindemith English horn sonata is quite a good one to listen to. And
I would think aim more toward lyrical stuff that suits the instrument so well.
Yeah, and think about everything that we spoke about, like, you can do these high notes easily enough melodically, but it doesn't really work fast and virtuosic. The middle register being able to project lows and have a really nice big full sound.
It's like that passage you just played is something I would never write for oboe.
Right.
But it works well on the bass oboe.
Yeah. But it's these kind of things to know about that that it can do, the arrangement can do, and not to be scared of it, and not to be scared to ask questions about it either. Yeah, and like, I mean, extended techniques can be explored and can be implemented into the piece of music too. So yeah, just feel free to hit me up and I'll...
Yeah. If you need to get a hold of him, just get a hold of me and I'll get a hold of him. So, but all right, guys, if there are no more questions, we'll go ahead and wrap it up for today. Mikey and I are going to be doing a masterclass at the University of North Texas tomorrow evening, and so we'll be talking to their oboe studio all about bass oboe. He will. I'll probably just be sitting back. I may film it or something.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah. So if there are no more questions, we are all wrapped up here. So, all right, guys, thanks so much, and hopefully the live stream will be up and available for everybody to see in a few hours as soon as it's just uploaded. All right, guys, thanks.